I'm the American Scotch Doctor, Dr. Dave. Here I have sitting a bottle of Deanston 12 from the Deanston Mill Distillery, a Highland single malt. Let's get to it. We've got a review to do. This is a very good malt. This is the first bottle that I've ever had of Deanston 12 or any Deanston from that distillery itself. Single malt, meaning that it came from one distillery only, different from a blend being from multiple distilleries mixed all together. This here is 46.3% alcohol by volume. Natural color. Apparently it took me a lot of work to find out that it was natural color. When I'm in the store, I don't want to have to do research for several days, search the website over and over to find it. It needs to be on the bottle, or it needs to be on the box. Bottle better. This is also a non-chill filter. Non-chill filter, they aren't going through these rigorous processes of freezing the product and removing a lot of the woody substances from the actual whiskey itself that came from the cask. It's really the cask material. A lot of people don't like to see little floaties in there. To me, I like to see a little bit of graininess with a whiskey because that's important, that I know that what was in the cask is still in my glass here. The Deanston Mill Distillery is actually about an hour north of Glasgow, roughly, give or take. Actually a little bit less as far as when I Google mapped it. It's actually a really young distillery, very young distillery, 1960s. It's actually when it opened up as a distillery. It was initially a cotton mill. Sounds like a lot of fun. It was an old cotton mill. So 60s became a distillery. In the 80s, early 80s, it shut down because apparently they were making bad whiskey. In the 90s, they opened back up. Apparently they got new equipment, but honestly, it's not the equipment, but the casks. I'm sure you could have problems with your equipment, but if you do not have engaging casks, quality casks, then you're going to have garbage whiskey. I don't care who you are. You can't have great equipment, poor casks, and make good whiskey.
It's simple as that.
This glass here has been sitting for about 10-15 minutes now. I like the rule, a minute in the glass for every year in the cask. A lot of people will say that, especially I feel with a cask strength whiskey or one that's been just freshly opened. If you just open up this bottle, you might want to let it sit a minute before you ever try to call anything out or say whether you like it or do not like it. This bottle's actually been open now for going on about 3 weeks. I had a tasting with some friends and it slowly went down from there. But as far as it's concerned, it's a very good malt. I'm going to say this is kind of a staple to me now as far as if somebody's going to say, what would you suggest I buy? You know, I'm getting into whiskey. I wouldn't suggest this as a very first time whiskey bottle. I know that this is my very first American Scotch Doctor video, but I wanted to set the precedence that this is the quality style of bottle that I'm looking for when I walk into any liquor store or when I'm ordering from anywhere. Again, 46% or greater, non-chill filter, natural color. Those are super important. If you find that on the bottle, it's worth giving it a shot. I'm telling you that if those are the three things printed on that bottle, it's worth giving it a shot, even if you've never heard the name, because that means that the company is holding higher standards and they're not just trying to sell to the everyday shopping consumer that's just buying gifts or that is just trying to impress friends and going, oh, I've got a nice bottle. I mean, you saw that on the top shelf.
Oh, I've got a nice bottle. You saw that on the top shelf.
It doesn't matter if they haven't went the lengths of actually making this a quality drink. When it comes to nosing, it's not super important that you're able to call out all these things because you'll watch these reviewers and they'll say, tastes like licorice from a 1960s dance hall. The thing that's important is, are you enjoying the whiskey? Write down a few notes. I always, when I get a bottle, I like to sit down and take a few notes on it. It's really nice to be able to go back and just reread over and go, okay, that's kind of how I felt about this style of malt. There's going to be different nuances that you're not going to recognize until after trying until trying hundreds and hundreds of types of whiskeys. And don't just stick to scotches. I know I'm the American Scotch Doctor, but that's just what I like. That's my thing. I will say on the nose, it's very clearly, this was aged in ex-bourbon cask, nothing but ex-bourbon cask. And when I smell this and when I taste this, you can tell that it's been really proactive casks, very high quality casks. You're going to get a lot of different 12-year-old whiskeys, and there might be color added to them, and they aren't even going to be this color. They're not going to be this nice golden, I think on the website they called it a golden amber or something like that. Try not to get too convoluted with calling it these random colors, because with whiskey these days it's not always that important, because if you have a port whiskey might be purple almost, and just because it's purple doesn't mean that it's different than this next one. So really don't try to base looking at a color on the shelf what's going to be the highest quality. Look at the integrity of the distillery itself. If the distillery doesn't have integrity, give it a shot if you want, but use it as an experience and as an educational lesson as to what's good whiskey and what's bad whiskey. That's the most important part. But again, on the nose here, I'm really smelling this bourbon, this almost honey, vanilla, very traditional scents that you're going to smell. And this is actually, I haven't added any water. This is still neat, meaning there's been no water added. I'm going to try this neat. Again, this has been sitting here for a little bit. It's really quite hot on the mouth here, kind of spiky as soon as I taste it, because it is a higher percentage. Most of your bottles you're going to get, the lowest percent that you can get Scotch whiskey is 40%. Anybody who's bottling at 40% is pulling more alcohol out of the liquor and watering it down. Literally, they water it down. It doesn't come out of a cask at 40%. They physically have to water it down. And that means that they're getting 6% more to sell to the customer, who actually doesn't really know that much about what they're buying. A lot of whiskeys, look around. But and you'll see a lot of good bourbons. A lot of good bourbons are going to be 40% or 46% or greater. It's important. Makes me mad. Can you tell? Makes me mad. Can you tell? I want to put a little bit of water in it, and because right now it's really quite, I'm going to call it kind of spicy. I'm going to put about a half a cap full. Now that this is sat here with a little bit of water in it, I'm going to go back in, and now this really mellowed out the nose even. Now it, rather than smelling the bourbon that I was smelling before, now it's nuttiness. Now it's just honey and vanilla, nuttiness, maltiness a little bit. It's really good. It's really good. Now, I have given this a script score, a prescription score of 88 out of 100. I wanted to give it an 87 out of 100 at first, but the finish and after it sat down, honestly, I think it tastes better in the last week or two than it did in the first week of opening it. When I had this at the whiskey tasting, my little friend gathering of guys coming over and tasting this, I thought it was good, but I would not have given this 88 out of 100 in the first week. And that goes for a lot of different whiskeys. There's going to be different times where if you don't like the whiskey, don't give it away. Don't you dare chug it. This is not cheap stuff. Don't waste it. Don't be a glutton and get drunk on it. Enjoy it. Let it sit. Let it wait. Use it for educational purposes. Come back to it later and go, what didn't I like about that? That'll teach you a lot. It might be, maybe I just don't like really fresh bourbon casks. Some people don't like bourbon. Maybe you'd prefer a reused bourbon cask, because I feel like a lot of the casks they use in this must have been very proactive, as I said. Again, really good malt. I would advise anybody who is on a Scotch whiskey or any spirit hunt for flavor to go ahead and give this a shot. Take a few notes on this. More importantly than us just going around buying bottles, I want to talk about also giving back to the world. I think it's super important that if we are able to afford this, we should be able to afford to take some time and help our community and the world. And we're wasting our time if we don't. Again, great whiskey. The American Scotch Doctor says, to your good health, Slàinte into the world. Don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe. Share it with your friends. I've got another video. It's ready right now. You might as well watch it. I worked pretty hard and I actually really had fun, so you don't have to watch it if you don't want to. I'll probably watch it more than you will. I'm very impressed. I'm very proud to actually share this as one of my very first reviews as the American Scotch Doctor, Dr. Dave.